At 75, Phil Neal finally opens up on rumours, and what he admits will surprise you. Phil Neal was Liverpool's rock, a highly decorated player with numerous league titles and European Cups. The only player to lift all 4 European Cups between 1977 and 1984. As captain, he carried the weight of history on his shoulders and the respect of an entire club. But one night in Brussels changed everything forever. May 29, 1985, the European Cup final between Liverpool and Juventus. Neal walked into Heysel Stadium expecting another glory night. He wanted to lift the coveted trophy. Instead, he found himself staring at crumbling concrete and flimsy fences. He was distinctly underwhelmed by what he saw. This wasn't Wembley or Rome. This was a stadium over 50 years old that had reportedly failed inspections and was literally crumbling. It barely stood comparison to the great venues where Liverpool had conquered Europe. Neal questioned the decision to host such a big final at Heysel. The frail-looking fence worried him. He believed the tragedy could have been avoided. His concerns weren't alone. Both Liverpool and Juventus officials had warned about the stadium's terrible condition. Then chaos erupted. As Liverpool's captain, Neal found himself at the centre of an unprecedented disaster. Along with the Juventus captain, he addressed the crowd. He appealed for calm as violence escalated around them. But it was too late. The delay in the dressing rooms felt endless. Then came the news that would haunt Neal forever. People had died. 39 fans lost their lives, predominantly Italian supporters. As soon as they heard this, Neal later said, they lost all interest in the match. The difference between then and now, he reflected, is that now we know watching football can be a matter of life and death. At Heysel, they still had it all to find out. Despite the horror, UEFA insisted the match continue. Both teams played as if in shock. Neal later admitted it would have been a better decision to call off the game entirely. The profound impact showed in his confession that he has absolutely no recollection of the match itself. Once they learned people had died, football became meaningless. But here's where the story gets complicated. Years later, Neal made a claim that sparked huge controversy. In his autobiography, he stated that Liverpool players, including Kenny Dalglish, knew deaths had occurred before they took the field. This directly contradicted what Dalglish had said in interviews. Neal basically accused Dalglish of lying. The dispute revealed deeper tensions. Neal felt passed over for the manager's role when Dalglish got the job. Dalglish then removed Neal from the captaincy. Their public disagreement about Heysel seemed tied to these unresolved professional grievances. Other players told different stories. Bruce Grobbelaar was clear about it. He said the players knew about all the events that night, including that people had died. The game should never have been played, he insisted, but UEFA forced them to continue. Grobbelaar personally didn't want to play. Alan Kennedy was told by a UEFA official that 4 or 5 people had died. He witnessed the horrific scene as the wall collapsed. He noticed how the more experienced players simply blocked it out to focus on the game. Others wanted the match called off. From the Juventus side, Zbigniew Boniek painted a different picture. He claimed Juventus players weren't aware of the true scale of the disaster before the match. They only learned the awful truth afterward. If they had known the exact situation, he said, maybe the players could have said something, but they didn't have the facts. However, an anonymous Juventus witness contradicted Boniek. This person claimed everyone from both teams said they didn't know people had died, but this couldn't be possible. A prominent Italian journalist near the pitch had told people that deaths had occurred. The varying accounts show how fragmented information was that chaotic night. Players might have known some people died without grasping the full scale. Different people received different levels of information in the dressing rooms. Some blocked it out as a way to cope. Others had no clear recollection due to trauma. Even general player sentiment suggested they understood the situation was severe. They knew cancelling the match would offer no solution, but the exact details remained murky for many. This confusion highlights how truth becomes complicated under extreme stress. Memory becomes unreliable during trauma. Some details get blocked out. Others get shaped by what people learn later. The disagreement between Neal and Dalglish reflects this reality, but also deeper personal issues between former teammates. 20 years later, Neal faced his biggest public relations disaster. In April 2005, he was blasted by fans after reports surfaced that he demanded payment for interviews about Heysel. He refused to contribute to a newspaper feature unless he got paid. Neal's justification was blunt. "People who want my views pay," he said. I'd rather forget that night. It was an ordeal, but why should I help you out? I'm helping you pay your mortgage by talking about Heysel. When people ask for my view, they usually have to pay for it. You're asking for my help for nothing. The public reaction was brutal. Fans expressed disgust. They called him bitter and greedy, a disgrace to Liverpool and the game. Comments poured in saying all Phil had to say was, "It's too difficult to talk about." There are people talking about losing family members, and all he cares about is getting paid. Some questioned if he would charge for upcoming commemoration appearances. Neal failed to attend an official media event where Italian press hoped to question him. The criticism was overwhelming. A few days later, Neal tried to make amends. He carried a commemorative banner onto the Anfield pitch before a Champions League match with Juventus. This was described as paying a very public tribute to Heysel victims, but cynics questioned if he was charging for that too. They wondered if this gesture truly balanced his earlier refusal to help. The controversy exposed a fundamental clash between commercial interests and human tragedy. Neal saw his insights as having commercial value. As a former professional athlete who had become a pundit, he framed it as a business transaction. This crashed against public expectations for solemn, free remembrance of a tragedy. For fans, especially those affected by Heysel, the memory of the dead was sacred. It couldn't be bought or sold. Neal's perceived insensitivity arose from applying a professional mindset to an event demanding pure empathy and free remembrance. The intense negative reaction, even 20 years later, showed that Heisel's pain remained very much alive. The depth of feeling was clear in comments like, "He has surpassed even himself by demanding money to talk about Heysel." The controversy reminded everyone that for many, Heysel wasn't just history, it was an open wound. Neal's reflections over the years consistently show his desire to distance himself from the trauma. He repeatedly said he'd rather forget that night. It was an ordeal for him. His admission of having no recollection of the match shows the profound impact the disaster had on him personally. In later thoughts, he acknowledged that in 1985, Heysel was the worst thing imaginable. He felt Liverpool had let English football down. This captures the psychological shift from expecting glory to facing catastrophe. Heysel had broader consequences too. It led to a 5-year ban for all English clubs from European competitions, with Liverpool receiving an additional year. The disaster became a turning point that fundamentally changed English football culture. Stricter regulations followed. Legal provisions to exclude troublemakers were introduced. All-seater stadiums became widespread. While he clearly suffered trauma from the disaster, his later handling of media requests was seen as putting personal gain over collective memory and sensitivity. The contradictions in player accounts show how truth fragments under extreme stress. Information was imperfectly received and processed that night. Neal's actions, especially the payment controversy, made him a controversial figure in the Heysel story. This reflects the enduring sensitivity around the tragedy and how public perception shapes historical figures. His story serves as a reminder of the human cost of sporting disasters. It shows the lasting challenges of collective memory and accountability for everyone involved. Sometimes, the biggest tragedy isn't just what happens in the moment, but how it haunts people for decades afterward. For Phil Neal, the captain who expected to lift another European Cup, Heysel became the defining moment that overshadowed everything else. His attempts to cope and move forward were constantly judged against impossible standards of perfect remembrance and sensitivity. At 75, Neal's admissions about that night reveal a man still wrestling with trauma from 40 years ago. His story reminds us that behind every public figure dealing with tragedy is a human being trying to make sense of senseless events. The rumours and controversies that followed may have damaged his reputation, but they also show the complexity of surviving such profound collective trauma.